The members that are sitting there with smiles on their faces to say, you're going to sit through the whole thing today. No, I'm only kidding. Before we do present our certificates to those folks that well deserve those certificates, only as a piece of paper. Unfortunately, there's not a check that goes with it, but a lot of good recognition to those folks. But before I do that, I want to welcome two new members. Aaron Kelberg is joining us. This is his first meeting today, and Sam Champion. This is his second meeting, but we officially welcome you today. How about that? Okay. At this time, then, I will ask Tim to come forward to make a few words and presentations.
Thank you, Ann. If you'll join me up here. I have the great honor to recognize three of our former commissioners who have just rolled off this summer, and they are Ron Gobble, Barry Bernstein, and Judy Turner. And I was looking back, and altogether they have served over 45 years, so we're losing quite a bit of institutional history here. And so they're going to be sorely missed. And we don't have anything grand to give them. We just have a nice little certificate in if you want to come up. But first we'll present it to Barry Bernstein. Barry, if you'll come on up. Barry was appointed 6 years ago as an at-large member, and she works for the Tennessee Bar Association, where she's the executive director, and she graduated from Vanderbilt Law School. And we really appreciate your service on the commission. You didn't think you knew a lot, I know, in the beginning, but you learned so quickly, and we really, really do appreciate all the time and energy you spent.
I learned a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That I appreciated a lot of the questions that Barry asked, because, you sit there thinking, I've been here too long, I shouldn't answer that question. But she always asked, and I thought, that didn't sound so dumb after all, because none of us knew the answer. So thank you, Barry, so much.
The next person we want to recognize is Miss Judy Turner. Judy, if you'll come on up. Judy was appointed in 1997. Judy was the first appointee when the commission expanded from 7 to 9 members to represent the downtown district.
I didn't know that.
And she has served quite a long time. And I know this award can't compare to the award we received last night by the Downtown Partnership, where you and your husband were honored for all of your service to the community. But we really do appreciate your long service. We're going to miss you. You always had a unique take in representing those downtown businesses. You and your husband were pioneers, moving down there and renovating one of the first full buildings downtown in the 90s. So we really do appreciate your service. We'll miss you, and we'll miss your dog. So.
Oh, I thought about trying to bring Dixon in today, but I was afraid they wouldn't let me pass the front desk, so I didn't bring him, but he sends his regards. And this does mean a lot to me. The one yesterday was great, but I have really enjoyed serving on this board. More at times than others, but thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you.
I feel like I've made a friend, and I just can't tell you how much I learned from what you brought to the board, and your knowledge and background is certainly going to be missed.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Ron Gobble. Ron, if you'll come on up. I have to add, Ron was also honored by the Downtown Partnership last night for Volunteer of the Year. You've been you've provided such real leadership on this commission. You've been on it longer than anybody that I've known of, 24 years.
I was younger than Sam Champion is now when I got on. And this is what it does to you, Sam.
But we really appreciate you've provided guidance to staff. You've helped provide leadership as we've tackled new issues, as we grew. I think when you started, we were a commission of having only 3 districts. Today we have 21 districts. That's quite a large number of growth of properties that we've been reviewing. You, I believe, had one of the first infills in Edgefield, our very first district, which caused you to become associated eventually with this body. But we really do appreciate your leadership. Your firm downtown, which has had a home there, and I know you've had a home downtown, and really thought building, investing in our downtown was important in our inner city neighborhood. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All the staff done a phenomenal job over the years. I will say this, in the 25 years I was on the commission, it made a difference. And if you go to neighborhoods that didn't have an overlay or a district, and you go to those that do, the longer they have that, the better those neighborhoods are, and it makes a difference. It's frustrating for everybody, but it works out. And so I do appreciate it, and I know you guys are going to do a great job. So thanks so much.
Truly, truly,
All right.
yes.
Yes, thank you.
And we don't have to stay for the meeting.
Thank you.
Enjoy your afternoon.
Yeah.
I could turn them on if you like. Well, those are folks that have given a lot of time and carry with them a lot of background and history that I hope that we will pick up and continue their legacy, because they have done a wonderful job here. So we'll get on with order of business today, and if I'll ask for the approval of minutes of August the 15th.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. The consent agenda today will be read and will only be presented as a lump sum of those items that are going to be on the consent agenda. We will only take one motion for all the items on the agenda. Or if there are any folks that want to hear the presentation of those items on the consent agenda, please raise your hand and we'll pull them from the consent agenda and make a full presentation. And then the appeal of the decisions from the Historic Zoning Commission pursuant to the provisions of the 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Law, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County by way of statute writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedure requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decisions of the Historic Zoning Commission. At this time, will you come up and present the consent agenda? And again, if there's any of these that you all would like pulled off, if you'll just raise your hand and we'll pull those and do a full presentation.
Okay, we have 7 applications on the consent agenda today, starting with 2005 20th Avenue, partial demolition, rear addition of a rear addition, new construction of a rear addition. 1506 Cedar Lane, new construction, addition to a primary structure and an accessory structure. 2007 Sweetbriar Avenue, demolition of an accessory structure, new construction of an accessory structure, and a setback reduction. 107 Lauderdale Road, demolition of an accessory structure, new construction of an addition and an accessory structure. 1725 Linden Avenue, new construction of a rear addition. 1203 Forest Avenue is a new construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit and a setback reduction. 204 South 11th Street is a new construction rear addition.
All right. These items will be voted on at one time. If there are no objections to the consent agenda, then do I entertain a motion of...
I just had one clarification on 2007 Sweetbriar. The staff notes in the body of their analysis that it's not a DADU, detached accessory dwelling unit. That's not what they're approving, but the recommendation, I just want to be clear, that's not what we're approving either, that it's not that.
Okay. Do you understand that?
That is correct. Our understanding is that it is not a detached accessory dwelling unit from the applicant.
Okay. Is that clarification?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to make sure
All
that's
right.
clear.
Okay. If not, do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor of adopting the consent agenda as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is accepted. I do notice we have one council person here today. Would you like to speak now, or would you like to?
Stay for the agenda item.
Okay, great. Thank you.
First.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, then we will proceed with then our new business.
144 Windsor is an appeal of a permit that was issued in 2011. The applicant initially requested to keep the existing dormers of this non-contributing house, but replace all the windows. Staff at that time requested a condition that more information about the windows be provided, and that condition was included in the commission's motion. After the commission approved the application, the applicant submitted detailed drawings to illustrate those windows, and in doing so also proposed a new design for a full solid dormer. Because the requested dormer was out of scale, the staff suggested alternatives, and the applicant chose an option that included 2 gable dormers with a shed dormer in between, as seen on the image that's submitted on the right. This design was included in the permit issued on August 17, 2011. In November, staff inspected construction and found the overall size of the dormer to be as planned. The windows were not in place, and the center opening was an appropriate size to accommodate the 2 windows as shown on the permit. The mullions that were required between the casement windows were not yet installed. However, this is not an unusual condition at the time of framing. At that time, we didn't know that there was a desire or a plan to put in one large window in the middle. On a routine inspection in July, staff noticed that what was planned as 2 windows was now 1 large window. Staff found the center window to be industrial in design, the proportions not in keeping with historic windows, and the new window did not meet design guideline 2B1D and G, as the details of the new window are not visually compatible with the rhythm of openings of his surrounding historic buildings. Staff requested the applicant remove the window and install the window that was shown on the permit, and after discussion, the applicant chose instead to appeal to you the conditions of the permit. And I believe she's here today. Yes, she's here.
All right. Are there any questions of staff before we open public hearing? If not, we have people that would like to make a presentation to the commission.
Thank you, and thank you all for all the great work you do. I live in the Bellmead Links neighborhood and represent it, and it's one of those neighborhoods that Ron just referred to that would be a very, very different place if it weren't for our historic overlay. I'm here today in support of staff on this particular project and in support of the rules we establish when we issue permits. As you may recall, if you were, and I know we have some new appointees, when this project was approved, it was approved over the objections of staff. Staff had recommended disapproval because of some of the side massing and scale of what was going on. But the commission did approve the project and it went forward. And so the what was built and what has been built the property owner has had a great deal of latitude working with staff, and I think it's reflected in the project. The fact that one small area is not in compliance may seem like a small thing, but you know, we count on the rules, we count on the commission's orders, we count on all of those things to make sure that everybody follows them, because if one person breaks them, we have to let other people break them. And I don't think that's going to serve the interests of my constituents or the district very well. So I ask that we insist that this project be built as approved and that the windows be installed as they were originally permitted. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
There's someone else who would like to come before the board. And,
yes.
Okay. If you'll come up and give your name and address.
My name is Jackie Daniel, and I am the homeowner of 144 Windsor Drive. And if you'd be kind enough to take the handouts, it'll kind of help my presentation. My husband and I bought this non-contributing house built in the early to mid-90s last year with the intention to transform it into a more contemporary home. In September of last year, I stood before you seeking permission to build an addition to the rear. Although advised by Robin Ziegler with the HCZ to build an entirely different project, I requested a hearing and prevailed with some small revisions based upon the first principle for new construction and additions, stating the guidelines shall apply only to the exteriors of buildings and portions that would be visible from public rights-of-way. Soon thereafter, I submitted the first full set of plans for approval in order to get my permit with a new facade featuring a single new simple shed dormer in lieu of the two small gabled dormers you see on the cover photo. This created a single dormer by combining the two existing ones. Ms. Ziegler denied this change along with some others, stating it was not appropriate and informed me the only acceptable method of connecting the two dormers to form a single one would be with a shed and gable style, also known as a Nantucket dormer. I complied and had my draftsman change it. I then got my building permit from Metro Codes. From there, I went to work finalizing details and could never quite talk myself into loving this cape-style element on the contemporary home I was trying to achieve. I reviewed my copy of the HCZ guidelines once again and noted point 2 of the purpose of the guidelines to read, quote, to regulate exterior design to ensure compatibility. There are no other shed and gable dormers on any facade in the links overlay I can find. On the very next page, Principle 3 dictated verbatim, quote, new buildings should not imitate past architectural styles. They should reflect the era of their own construction. Shed and gable dormers are not typical of modern-day architecture. Finally, Principle number 5 reads, quote, continuous construction in Belmead Links Triangle neighborhood during the early 20th century resulted in a variety of building types and styles that illustrate the evolution of architectural styles and technology over the years. Armed with this knowledge, I employed James Dunn, the respected owner of Vintage Millworks, in business for over 25 years. He redrew the facade to introduce a new dormer style and window design. I took this to Ms. Ziegler for approval with a note in the bottom corner, and please see page 8 on your handout, asking in 2 separate questions if the dormer was acceptable, and I asked the same of the windows. She once again disproved the dormer with a notation, quote, in her handwriting, told her scale of dormer was too large, but absolutely nothing referencing the windows. In fact, there is a clear initial note on that page stating windows okay. Subsequent communications confirmed the dormer style, and soon afterward I called in for the 3rd phase of inspection for the preservation permit, intended to review both framing and fenestration. The 2 emails enclosed in your handout confirm my concern to assure I had the windows right before I ordered them. I got approval. I'm completely surprised to be here today over the windows, as I feel I did everything by the book, following instruction with total and complete compliance for the wishes of the HCZ. I remain aesthetically opposed to my current dormer, mandated by Ms. Ziegler, yet I was not particularly attached to the windows drawn by Mr. Dunn. I would have been fine going back to 4 casements if I had understood this to be the command. I beg for your appeal based upon the 3 following foundations. First and foremost, Ms. Ziegler's instructions were not communicated in a clear manner. Secondly, I received approval for the framing and fenestration phase of the permit. If the original plans were the basis for this approval, there is no way the current window opening could translate to the original drawing for 4 equally sized casements, even with a center mullion. The center window in question is 3 times the size of the other 2 on the outside, and all are considerably taller. With all due respect, I think the directive from Ms. Ziegler in this case contradicts the stated guidelines of the HCZ, where architectural styles should reflect the era of their own construction. I am attempting to create a contemporary home out of a non-contributing house. Thank you for your consideration. Removing this window would cause financial hardship and further disruptions for the lives of my family. My intention is, always, and has been to comply with the rules of my local government. Please help me.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission? At this time, we'll close the public hearing and open for discussion.
I'm having a little difficulty following these emails about her statement that Robin may or may not have, or she's claiming that you didn't approve or did approve the windows. Is that, where is that in here?
Sure. This is my first time to get this, so I'm not sure what's where in here, but I can tell you that what she asked of you in that permit was to replace all the windows. Those windows were approved. The dormer was not. There was no way for me to know that she meant to take the window from the disapproved dormer and put it into the original planned dormer. They're completely different, so that was never communicated to me.
And the windows that were approved
For the rest of the house, those were approved, yes, right.
But that was translated into include the dormer itself. Is that what you're saying?
That seems to be her understanding, was that she could take the window out of the disapproved dormer and put it into the old dormer. But that was not my understanding. I was never told that. It wasn't just the framing of the dormer that was disapproved, it was the entire dormer.
Robin, I'm not sure I follow your comment about the take the existing dormer or window and put it in the new
Well, I'm speaking for the applicant a little bit, so I may be off here, but it seems to be that the dormer that was submitted after the permit was issued, which she shows on page 8, was disapproved. That's the entire dormer, the roofing of the dormer, the sides of the dormer, the window, the entire dormer. In addition, she provided the additional information that you requested for all the other windows, and that is what staff approved. Does that explain?
I think so, but are you suggesting that the windows that are in the constructed dormer are the same windows that were planned in the disapproved dormer, just configured differently to try to meet the staff's recommended dormer type?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
All I can tell you is the single dormer with the single window was disapproved. So having not received anything else, any other potential, we were going with the permit, which is the 2 gabled dormers and 2 windows in between.
Okay, the number sheet 4 of her handout, that dormer of the bottom is the approved dormer. Is that correct?
Which we see.
The image on the left is the one that was requested and disapproved, and the image on the right is the one that was included. Excuse me. The image on the right is the one that was included in the permit. And approved.
Okay.
After receiving the one on the left, we didn't receive any other requests. And so we continued with the one that had been approved.
So you never received a drawing of what has been built?
No.
There's some, let's just say, confusion over the window type, but there's no drawing that you saw that reflects the current design or the gable or anything.
No, all of we received is the one on the right that was issued in the permit.
Okay.
And then later we received the one on the left, which was disapproved. And that's all I've received.
You all like to open the public hearing? Sure. Second. No. All right. Thank you. If you would come up, identify yourself again so we can speak.
My name is Jackie Daniel, homeowner of 144 Windsor, and just really, I understood the notes from her on that page 8 to be windows okay, scale of dormer too large as they were written. And I never employed anybody to redraw it again because I understood the only change to be, my understanding was to go back to the shed and gable dormer, and subsequent emails followed up confirming this change. So I understood the windows to be okay and the dormer needed to go back to what she had asked in the beginning. So that's why I never resubmitted drawings, because I just confirmed it with an email.
Can you walk me through this? The windows are okay, and I built what I built because there's something in here that says the shed and dormers are okay. Where's that? You lost me on that last sentence that you said.
Well, in the beginning, as I said, I submitted the drawings.
Okay, the drawings right here. With the notes of the windows are okay, but the dormer's too big.
Right.
Okay, I get that.
Okay. So then I understood my instructions to be from that point forward to go, everything was fine, but go back to the shed and gable dormer, which is what I did.
But the shed. Why wouldn't you go back to the dormer that was approved on the plans?
That is the dormer that was approved on the plans, the shed and gable.
So the only thing we're talking about is the window treatment? I thought we were talking about the window treatment and the shape of the dormer. No.
Just the center window.
Okay.
It's drawn as 2 windows, and it's one large industrial-style window.
You all have any questions? Any clarification? Any other comments?
May we see the former two images of the window and dormer that exist there now?
The actual.
They were there one moment.
Oh,
Okay.
is that what you...
That's fine. That's fine. Either one is fine. But that's
One more back, please. Thanks.
yeah, that's fine.
So there's one large glass unit versus 2? Is that what this is about?
That's right. The center window is more of an industrial-style window than residential, which was originally proposed.
Robin, is the overall dimension of the dormer itself the same?
I do not know. Oh, yeah, the overall dormer is correct, yes. We looked at that in the framing inspection, and that was proceeding as permitted.
I guess I'm sorry to keep rambling on here. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with the windows are okay, and then we got to this large glass unit. I mean, I can understand. I'm just not really sure how you got that big leap from this note, the windows are okay, to now just having one large unit.
Right. Sean, could you go back to the 2 drawings? When we said the windows were okay, we were talking about all the windows for the building. There was no way that I should have known, I think, if you look at the drawing on the left, that huge window was going to fit into the existing dormer. So when we approved the windows, we approved the windows for the entire building, but we did not approve the dormer. We disapproved the dormer, which includes all portions of the dormer. Windows, roof, sides, everything about it, if that helps.
Is the dormer, the image we see on the right side of the screen, is that the approved dormer?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the one in the permit that the commission approved.
But it's also not what we have on site?
Correct.
Okay.
And I have one question. Just to clarify, because every time the question gets asked, it sounds slightly, or I get more confused. The image on the right was submitted by the applicant once the suggestion to go with the gable and shed dormer was made.
That's correct.
It was approved by staff.
By the commission.
By the commission. So it was part of our approval.
Part of the permit.
Months ago. Okay. Image on the left was
submitted later.
Submitted later.
And disapproved by staff.
Okay.
And you can see the entire image is crossed out, window, the entire image.
Right. Thank you.
I think just another step in clarification is that the permit was issued on the one on the right, and they realized that if there were change made to the permit, that they needed to submit another drawing, which they did to the left, and that was disapproved.
That's correct.
All right. All right. Any action?
Well, it seems to me that it was clear what was approved, and then there was a clear disapproval with an exchange that contained a number of ambiguities. So I think at that point it becomes incumbent upon the applicant to come back and say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Do you approve this? There doesn't seem to be that last step. So for me, it makes sense to support the staff recommendation to disapprove and have her come back with something that we can clearly approve or staff can approve and go forward from there.
Okay, we have a motion.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in the question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just reading the email of November 29th, and the highlighted portion, I'm mostly concerned the dormers are right and the window openings are correct, so I can order the windows and proceed with the new roof. I guess what I don't see here is the response to that. Is that missing?
I don't have all the emails here with me today.
I have those answers. Can I talk again?
Yeah, I'd like
And
to ask
the window, I believe this was in response to the framing check. And yes, the dormer was correct and the window opening was correct. But we still did not know that there was a plan at that time to put in one window instead of two. The framing check met the permit. Again, the mullion wasn't in place, but mullions are not in place during framing checks.
Right, I see. Thank you. That answers.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion does carry. Motion is accepted. That is disapproval. Uh, 329 Broadway.
Thank you. For 329 Broadway, there are some outstanding violations that are relevant to the request today. One is the cornice shown on the plans has not been installed. The paint color was disapproved by staff and not yet corrected. And 2 signs were installed without a permit. What they are proposing today are 2 more signs. The building is allowed 3 signs overall and currently has 3. One is the painted wood sign above the door, a painted sign at the top of the building, and a sign on the concrete at the entrance on the floor. Not only were these signs installed without a permit, at least 2 do not meet the design guidelines. The one at the top of the building and the one on the ground are in inappropriate locations. The 2 newly proposed projecting signs do not meet the guidelines in terms of the location, which really should be between the first and second levels or at the second level. So staff recommends that the signs be located level with the second floor windows. The proposed signs do meet the design guidelines in terms of scale and materials and mounting. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions: that the proposed signs be moved down to be in line with the second story windows, and the permit not be issued until the unpermitted sign at the top and the unpermitted sign on the ground at the entrance are removed. This will correct the signage violation and keep the total number of signs at the number allowed by the design guidelines. With these conditions, staff finds that the project meets the design guidelines for signage in the Broadway Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay.
Thank you, Robin. Are there any other questions of staff before we open the public hearing? If not, the public hearing is open. Is there someone here that would like to address the commission? I'll close the public hearing then, and we'll have a discussion.
I have a question for legal on this one. Can our approval be tied at all to the correction of or a discussion and/or possible approval be tied to correction? In other words, before we give approval to something that may or may not happen, and then we've subsequently given approval, and this other is still tied up, yet we've now got 5 signs. Legally, what power do we have, if any at all, to maybe even not consider this or have the applicant defer it and/or deny it until such time as it's brought into compliance?
You certainly can take into consideration, particularly in this case, you can take into consideration other signs on the property. The signs the sign that they are trying to seek approval from today is necessarily involved with the other signs there in terms of their allotment. So that's one reason that you could do that as well. Also, you could make it, as is done here, conditioned your approval today in light of the fact that that sign in and of itself meets the guidelines. You can make your decision contingent on the removal of the violations that exist on the property, because it would be my opinion that a court would probably find that that would be a reasonable condition in light of your granting your approval today for them to correct other sign violations. It might be a little bit different if we were talking about some other type of violation on the property, but because this is specifically a sign violation, I think it's close enough nexus there to make that condition.
Any other comments, questions?
I just have a question. If the second condition is not included in our decision, does the city still pursue removal of unpermitted signs?
It can. At the direction of the staff or at the direction of the commission, we can certainly look into enforcement procedures in environmental court to seek the removal of the signs, just because they are by definition illegal signs and unpermitted signs.
So in no way this staff recommendation, if they choose not to put these 2 new signs up, in no way is it giving them any additional rights for the illegal signs.
That's correct. If you approve it today and they still don't put those up, the board or the legal department or the city, at the direction of the board or at the direction of the staff, can still pursue legal remedy against them for the illegal signs that are there. Nothing changes about enforcement.
The permit is the signage permit. Is that the permit we're talking about?
That's correct. That's my understanding.
Okay. I know we're saying that we would a permit not be issued until. Do we need to include a time frame, or is that sort of left up to them when they want to and when they can?
Yeah, it would be at the discretion of the board if you wanted to put in a time frame, or if you didn't want to, that would be okay as well. I think there is a time frame for use of the permits, and Robin, you may have to chime in on that. But I think so. For instance, I don't know that the permit itself is good, forever. So it may expire on its own terms before they take any action on it, and that's a possibility.
Well, in other words, I mean, they can apply for a permit. But we're saying we're not going to, if we adopt staff recommendation, then until they do what the condition on that, they will not be issued a permit.
That's correct. Okay. And it's the equivalent of what some boards and commissions call a grant and delay. You grant the permit based on the criteria that they've met, but you delay issuance of it. So in effect, they don't have one until they've complied with it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do I hear a recommendation?
I move approval based on staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor of adopting the recommendation made by staff?
Aye.
Opposed?
Vice Chairperson, we did not open it to public hearing, I believe.
We did.
We did.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
asked if
So
there was
they
anyone
didn't.
in that- Okay, but keep me in check. Okay. Okay. We've had a motion, a second, and it has been accepted that we adopt staff recommendation. 317 Broadway.
I'm passing around an image that will be explained here in just a moment. Excuse me, I'm sorry, that's for a later case. I'm getting confused here. This is for 317 Broadway. The applicant proposes to install a rear addition and make alterations to the front facade of the historic building at 317 Broadway. The rear addition meets all the design guidelines. The alterations on the storefront include removing the glass veneer, changing the location of the entrance, and removing the upper story windows, and altering the size of those openings to accommodate double doors and railings. The glass storefront is historic. A structural glass front like this, it's sometimes known as Carrera vitrolite, veneer was added in the first half of the 20th century. Although the glass is not the original storefront, it is a typical alteration to downtown buildings, primarily between the 1920s and 1950s, as a way to update storefronts, and so has become a part of the historic fabric of the building. Glass storefronts such as this one are considered a significant architectural detail as they tell the story of the evolution of the district. According to the design guidelines, historic storefronts should be retained and repairs made where needed. Therefore, staff finds removal of the glass veneer to be inappropriate and does not meet Section 2A1 of the design guidelines. The application includes relocation of the primary entrance and the installation of a new secondary door on the main facade within the current recessed entry. The storefront windows are not original, as they were replaced with aluminum accordion windows sometime after 2004. However, the configuration of the storefront does not appear to have changed. The existing entrance has tile floor, and earlier photographs show an entrance at the current location. In keeping with the design guidelines requirements to retain the original entryways, staff does not recommend moving the current doorway and adding a second one. The proposed action does not meet Section 2A2 of the design guidelines. Changing the upper story windows to doors does not meet Section 2B1 of the design guidelines, which require that existing window openings as well as windows themselves be retained. In addition, it states that new window openings should not be introduced and balcony rails are inappropriate. The existing signage and awnings will be retained, and there's no known lighting proposed. Staff recommends approval of the rear addition, finding the addition meets Section VH of the design guidelines for 5H for the design guidelines for additions, and staff recommends disapproval of all proposed alterations to the front facade, finding the alterations do not meet Section 2 of the design guidelines for rehabilitation.
Do you all have questions of staff?
I do have one question of staff with regard to entries and/or exits. Is it an applicant? I'm sure can speak to this. Is the additional exit that's applied for part of the exiting of upper floors? Or I'm curious how that's handled now, and whether these renovations or changes to the building would how that consideration might be made for.
I haven't seen interior plans. I think the applicant can probably answer that better.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. At this time, open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission at this time? Please come forward, give your name and address.
I want to thank you. My name is Stephen DeLeo, and I represent the owners and the project. The first thing I wanted to bring up, and that question was brought up, I believe that you do have the floor plans. I'm looking at the applicant that you had made on the application. The first floor plan is attached, the second, and the third. So the floor plans are there to address the fire exit, because that's what that additional door is. And in the recommendation from the staff on page 3, doors and entryways 6, it says, generally new entryways should not be introduced to public facades unless needed for access to an upper floor for a secondary building use. If a new entrance is needed, it should be compatible with the style and the period of the building. The only reason we're asking for that front door is because we have to have that to be able to use the rest of the building. The code requires a fire exit at the rear of the building and at the front, and the fire exit has to be with magnetic closers on it to shut down so the public can get out of it. So without that door, we would not be able to even use the second and third floor of our building. That's answered. I think that answers your question clearly on that. So if you look at the drawing, it's a fire escape is what it is. And we located it where it is with the most minimal change to the front elevation because we want to cooperate, in every way that we possibly can to maintain the character and the intent of downtown. So if you look at the elevation, that the way we propose it, we have that all the way over to the far left of the building, and we have to just slightly move the existing front door to the right in order to accommodate codes. They are pretty specific about some widths and dimensions that are around the sides of the doors for fire escape. Before I go any further, do you have any questions specifically about why we have to have that front door on that elevation?
Are you keeping the windows, the bottom level windows as they are? The only thing you're moving is the door, or are you redoing all that?
Well, the windows that are there are accordion type, and we're not changing the sizes or the locations of them. But if you look, that door does have to go over, so the one window will go back the same way. It'll just have to be made a little bit smaller as we move the front door over to the right side.
What about all the other ones?
Yeah, it'll be the exact same window. It'll be the same thing. It's not, we're not going to change it out.
Are there any other questions?
Okay.
Okay.
We have some other comments we would like to bring up with regards to it. The staff recommended the approval for the rear and no approval on the front for the changes to the building, and we disagree that the building is a contributing building, and we have evidence to that both in photographs and going through the building. And I just want to run down very quickly what it is. The third floor was added sometime in the late 50s to early 60s, and evidence is clear from the construction materials and the methods. I have a whole bunch of pictures here which show the interior, what it is, and if you stand on the outside and you look at it, you can see how the brick to the left stops and all the brick is new everywhere else. The floors on the third floor, if you go into the building, do not line up. The brick is newer on the east side front and the east and west side of the rear of the buildings, and all of the front windows have been replaced as recently as 1989. Work was done under the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation, and that documentation is in your guys' possession. The rear windows are metal casement windows from the late 60s. The one thing that's very evident, and I have photographs of it if you want me to pass them around, because they don't show up very well on the ones that were there. If you look at some of these photographs here. There were arches in the rear on the first floor on the what we call the east side of the building in the rear that have been filled in, showing the architectural contemporaneous of the early 1900 vintages, and it's very clear, and you can see those arches were there. All have been filled in, and all of the existing windows and doors have steel lintels, which the photographs show, and it is all newer brick from the 60s, and everything is square. And there are no arches anywhere in the building showing any of the contemporaneous vintages of the early 1900s. The most definite one is the entire third floor center is a cinder block wall. It's not brick like the second floor. It has steel beams supporting the roof versus the typical old Broadway buildings that all have wood joists going from side to side. So the third floor was completely added to this building. The oldest picture that you have is on page 6 of the application review, is from 1972. And if you look at it closely, it shows a split on the storefront. And in the 1982 picture, it shows very clear that these were and always have been 2 buildings, and they were 317 and 319 Broadway. Those were the addresses of the buildings. The buildings were separate, and the black storefront was added, trying to make it look like one building. And this was done in the late 60s or the early 70s with deco art type material construction, if you look at it. And it was to compete with the look of the service merchandises at the time for Harley Holt Furniture Company. It's not structural, it is not vintage in any way. It's very important that it's glass mirrors. If you go and look at the majority of it's plexiglass at this point, some of it's just black paint, but a lot of it is glass mirrors. And if you look at the way it's attached and you do an investigation, it was done in the late 60s because it was all done with extruded aluminum. And the aluminum was placed onto the brick, all right? And the trim was put around it, and then they used mortar and cement to smooth out the brick in order to glue the adhesive on, which that's what is holding this stuff up. So it's clearly that it's not old, it's nowhere near as old as anybody says. It's more like the 60s or 70s. None of the storefront is wood and glass, contemporaries of any of the early 1900 storefronts. And the reason all this was changed in recent years was to give it an updated storefront look down on Broadway, which this was a very popular renovation in the early 70s to compete for customers for downtown areas. Because of all the strip malls that were popping up around the country, the new stores, had to have a better look to try to keep customers. And it's very important to just consider that. So we are maintaining that this is not a contributing building, and the flexibility of the things that we need in it, to use, we want to work with you. But one of the things that, we can work with the colors and so forth and anything to give it the appearance of a vintage. And if you look into the records, the cornice on the west side of the building was added, to match the one on the left side of the building. And you go out there, and if you inspect the building, and I've been all through that building, and we can show you all the construction methods of what it is. So it's clearly been tremendously changed from day. So that's why we are asking for approval, as it's stated in the way that we filed it. We want to increase it. We certainly would like to work with you on colors and any vintage stuff that would work to make it look older.
Thank you. You all, at this time, I'm going to leave the public hearing open because they may have some questions. So as we look at this, you all have any questions?
I think maybe a clarification from staff, given the information that the applicant has presented to the board in terms of the porcelain glass, the material on the ground floor, that staff's analysis of that as having historical significance in its own right, albeit not original, quote unquote, to the building. Can you maybe, I don't want to say fill in some blanks, but talk to us a little bit more about how you've arrived at that position?
The most important thing that we looked at was the National Register nomination, which notes the building as being contributing, and the study that was done in, I believe it was 82, 82, a market and design study. And that study goes through each building on Broadway and lists recommendations. And one of those recommendations was that original storefront should be kept. Obviously, the windows themselves are not original. That's not a big deal, but they're not changing those anyway. It's our understanding, based on the National Register nomination from '79, that the third story was reconstructed after a 1939 fire. So, yes, there's been a lot of changes to this building, as there have been many changes to all the buildings on Broadway and 2nd, but not to the extent to completely change the look and form and call it non-contributing. Does that help?
It does. So in other words, in terms of the nomination, the analysis of this building, the added later piece of the combination, I guess, of the, is it glass? Has it been repaired and not repaired with like kind over time? What
It's had a lot of repairs. There's pieces missing, there's pieces cracked. Some of it's plexiglass, some of it appears to be glass. I can't tell for sure. I didn't see any mirrored pieces, but it's definitely some plexiglass and some glass.
Okay.
And what is your recommendation on that, Robin?
That the original storefront, the upper floor windows, the opening should be kept, the entrance should be kept, and that the addition should be approved.
As far as the black panels, you do or do not care about that?
No, that they are now a part of the historic story. As he was stating, that is something that they typically did at that time to upgrade and to compete with other stores, and so that's become a part of its history and a part of its story.
Any other questions, clarifications?
I do have a question for staff, and that's with regard to exiting and egress. There's maybe a handful of ways that can be accomplished. This is one of them. And I guess it strikes me that is there, and I know it's not staff's job to do the design work, but certainly when we have a conflict between public safety or something the fire marshal may require to occupy the upper floors of this building and historic guidelines, somewhere we've got to provide the applicant with some guidance as to how they might keep people safe, but then also make some nods towards keeping the building in its its closest state, I guess, as we can.
And I can answer that. At the time that the application was submitted, there was no discussion about why the door was needed, so there wasn't an opportunity to talk about solutions. But the architect and I did talk yesterday, and I wondered if there could be a door added to the inside of the inset, but he needs to look at the measurements, and like you said, I think there are some other solutions, but there hasn't been any discussion of those yet.
Well, I can tell you, I know the codes pretty well for fire. The solution that we have is the smallest opening and the smallest dimension that we can have. They require 18 inches from the panic bar to the side of the wall so that people don't get jammed up to come out. That's the most narrow it could be. It has also got to be completely separate so that the doors and everything shut off from inside the building. So if there's a fire, the fire escape is not on fire. The inside of the building's on fire and all the doors magnetically shut. That is the solution. This is the smallest solution. In fact, when Preston submitted the first plans to me, I redrew all of that to make it even much smaller myself. I do a lot of the drawing and the design, and Preston and I work that all out together. And he is the architect. So I can assure you that that's the smallest that we can have, because we wanted to take up the least amount of interior space possible, because that's where our customers are, and we don't want to reduce it. So we were trying to figure out a way that we could get a fire escape in there, or we even wanted to know if we could just have the rear fire escape, and we got turned down because of the distances and all the public safeties. So that is the only place the door can go for us to be able to use the second and third floor of the building.
Was consideration given to utilizing the existing doors and letting the stairwell exit through a vestibule?
Well, the code requires that it can't go out onto Broadway, and that's why the door is recessed back as a vestibule. Everything has to open out for, egress, especially fire. So it's concaved in, so the two doors open out, which are the main entrances. The same thing has to be on a fire door also. It has to be able to open up in a vestibule. That's why it's set back, in order so that there can never be blockage from something on Broadway if somebody's panically coming out. So it is recessed back. If you look at the first floor plan, it's shown that it goes back, and then we maintain that storefront across there. If you look at the elevation closely, we even there's a small storefront window on the existing door that's there right now. You can't see it really because it's a piece of glass that's been painted black on the back of it. That's all it is. And it literally, to the left of the front door, was a store window to put something in. That we're going to do away with. So we said, well, to try to keep the building to look continuing, we added a small little window to the left side so that we wouldn't change the front of this, at all. We did everything we could do to keep the front elevation very close to what it is. The reason we wanted to remove the black, and I mean that's a workable, was because it's in terrible disarray, it's not authentic, and there is nice brick all the way underneath of it, all the way down, which we would like to get back to the brick, which was what the original building was.
So I guess the question I had was whether the stair could exit through an enclosed vestibule that then exits out the existing.
No, it must go directly to the street. It cannot go into a vestibule. It has to be open up and there's nothing after the door opens going into the building except the outside. Fire requires that, it comes down. Now, we have a door to use it from the inside also, but those doors are set up on magnetic hinges.
That storefront would have to change, Hunter.
But it wouldn't meet our code. Because you're creating a 1-hour fire enclosure.
The vestibule would have to be an enclosure, but the exterior wall wouldn't, I don't believe, have to be. Just the interior walls would. But yeah, it would require additional doors and an enclosure. And it would take space, as the applicant stated, it would take space out of the storefront.
Well, it would crowd we looked at it, what it would do is it would make the front look a lot different because those doors the window would have to be moved way over and get smaller and smaller and smaller on the right-hand side, and the two double doors wouldn't be able to stay like they are. We're trying to maintain that same vestibule look, so it's very minimal change to the front. Get it over to the side.
Press the property line.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, and I want to just make one more comment. We're willing to work with colors, or if the black has to be there and they want to leave that there, we can work that out. We just have to have the door. We need to have the building the way we've asked for it, and we feel that, if you really look at the building, it is not a contributing building.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Dan?
Oh, I had a really question for discussion among commission members as to the state of the lower portion and that some of the other issues. I'm a little more comfortable, or I think I see the way forward on that. But I wanted to hear what others' thoughts are based on the applicant's presentation and the staff's analysis.
Can I get those pictures back?
Sure.
I didn't know where they were at.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like, before I close the public hearing, is there anyone else that would like to address the commission?
Once they've been submitted, they need to stay with us.
They want us to leave the submitted photographs here? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's no one else that would like to address the commission? All right. We'll close the public hearing and for discussion.
I personally am in favor of working out the exit. I think that's important. I think some charge of this commission is to preserve the old while making things work for the new, and to have this building renovated and as a new use I think is important for our city. So I am okay with the redo of the front entry and the addition of that fire stair. After that, I probably would revert back to staff recommendation, but I could easily be talked into at least approving that part.
guess on the fire stair, Ben had an idea, and I'm not sure if the code would allow it, or perhaps fire marshal would allow it, and that is put glass in that door, so that it's more consistent with a storefront look rather than a solid metal door.
And as I was, I didn't want to say that out loud because I wasn't sure it was a good idea yet or not. And after I've had time to ponder it, I mean, I think as a building owner, you want people to know where the front door is. So if you put full glass in it, you might, it may confuse people. Obviously, there won't be a handle on it, so you can't get in there. But we don't want to confusing people is not what we want to do. I think my initial reaction to it is if there are ways that the applicant and the architect can mitigate its prominence to the facade, whether if the black is kept and you kind of paint that door out because it's used in an emergency and nobody's going to be fiddling with it and it kind of tends to go away. The more sometimes you mess with something like that by putting glass in it, or it just draws more and more attention to it, and you'd rather it not be the thing that you focused on. So I'd maybe broaden that 100 request of the applicant is to analyze ways that they could mitigate the impact of what is a necessary piece to the development of this building.
And I'm fine with that. I think if it had glass in it, it would appear perhaps like a second story entrance, which would not necessarily always be accessible to the public.
Right.
So
that could work as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can let staff work with the applicant on mitigating the impact of that door.
Would somebody want to craft a motion to suggest how we approach the?
Yeah, I'll move approval of 317 Broadway with staff's recommendation, which does not include the doors and replacement of the windows on the front. Upper stories, however, that the applicant's architect work with the staff to, as much as possible, mitigate the appearance of the necessary fire exit on the I think it's the east side of the building.
West side.
West.
Okay, is that motion clear to everyone? Hunter?
You are specifically, your motion specifically allows that fire exit to be put on that storefront.
That is the intent of the motion, yes.
I guess my question is the staff's recommendation. If I could get the staff to clarify each objection that the staff has on the front facade.
Sure.
Sort of in a bullet point.
It was changing the upper story windows to doors and adding the railings, removing the glass, and adding the second door to the primary facade. And I believe that was the things that we were recommending disapproval of.
When you say removing the glass, you're talking about
Not the glass windows, but the glass facade.
the mark.
Yes, the veneer, yeah.
Black panels, okay. Okay, so Ben, your motion essentially is to approve staff's recommendation with regard to those elements, with the exception of the door?
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the recommendation?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Just for clarity to the applicant, I suppose the applicant could work with staff to come up with another facade to address some of those issues. Would that have to come back before the commission, or if it meets the guidelines?
Not unless you wanted it to.
Okay. Thank you.
So the image that I prematurely started passing around is relevant now. The proposed project sign meets the design guidelines at 100 Broadway in terms of the location, the number of signs per building, the mounting, and the scale. The reason it's not on the agenda, the consent agenda, is because of the internal illumination, which the design guidelines prohibit. However, recently when the downtown code area was considering new signage guidelines, consultants showed examples of backlit signs that use a dark background that only allowed for the illumination of the lettering. They argued that this type of sign meets the intent of the design guidelines. These top two are, on the left, are examples that the consultant provided, and the others are some that staff found. The advantages of this type of lighting is that it's relatively inexpensive option for applicants. It allows for lighter signage that requires fewer holes in the historic walls, and it allows for thinner signs than the larger neon signs. In this case, that's what they're proposing, a sign with a dark rust background with only the white lettering down the body of the sign and the logo at the bottom being illuminated internally. These are some examples of what staff believes the design guidelines are trying to prevent that would still be prohibited if the signs are required to have a solid dark background. Staff recommends approval. However, the Commission should understand that if approved, you would be allowing for like signage within the Broadway Historic Overlay. Staff finds that an internally lit sign with a dark, opaque, and I'm going to add solid, colored background meets the intent of Section 3F of the design guidelines. Staff recommends approval, finding that the proposed to meet the design guidelines with the exception of 3F, of which the intent is met by having a dark, opaque, solid background. And I believe the applicant is here if you have any questions. They're also recommending or asking for a different location than what you saw in the packets. They're recommending, or they're asking that they move it over a little bit so that it's in front of, and that's what I passed around, so it would be in front of the window, yes, which is typically not something that we would recommend. However, in this case, the fire escape already covers the window. So this would get it away from one of the architectural features and get it away from the tree as well. So that they are proposing that new location as a part of this today.
This is the new location. All right. Are there any questions?
It's the same level, just scooted over, so sorry.
Any questions of the staff before we open the public hearing? Okay. Is this open for public hearing? Are there people that would like to address the Commission on this issue? Come forward. Okay. All right. Yes, if you'll give your name.
Sure.
And
My name
address,
is Don
please.
Morris, and I'm the general manager of the Hard Rock in Nashville. And as Robin just told you, we've been working for about 1.5 years, 2 years, trying to get the sign done. I think we've come to a good compromise, and we're just hoping to get it passed this time. So,
thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll close the public hearing. Open for discussion.
Question for staff on the, it's apparent why the blade sign is away from the building, and there are some mitigating factors here, certainly. But I'd like a refresher on typically what, I know we've seen cases before us where we want to get out broader or prouder than the building than the guidelines allow, and it appears that this may be a case where we would certainly consider that, again, because of mitigating factors. But what is the guideline specifically with proximity to the building?
Actually, this one does meet it. We've looked at a sign could be projecting out by 7 feet from the wall, and this one is so narrow that even though it's pushed out so far because of the fire escape, it's still within those parameters.
So it's compliant. Great. Okay, thanks.
Robin, is it also compliant with height?
Yes.
It meets all of those criteria. Thank you.
That's correct.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right. This is an application for a rear addition with a setback reduction in the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay, 2414 Oakland Avenue is a two-story, four-square house with press face block wall, first story, and shake siding on the upper story. It is a contributing structure constructed circa 1910. The applicant is proposing to enlarge the structure with a two-story rear addition, and that addition would also include a, one-story side porch or wraparound porch. The porch component is what would require the setback reduction. Because it is on a corner lot, the side setback would need to be reduced from 10 feet to 5 feet. The main body of the addition, as I said, would be 2 stories tall, with the roof of the addition hipped, a lower slope than the existing roof, but that lower slope allows its peak to sit 5 feet below the peak of the existing roof, and then step down 5 feet further, and then finally aligning so that the eaves of the addition align with the eaves of the historic house. And that eave height is 21 feet above the main floor level. That 2-story addition would set in from the walls of the historic house by 2 feet on each side and would have a footprint of 675 square feet. The 1-story porch would wrap around the rear and step out from the right side on the bottom, towards the bottom of the screen. Step out 5 feet further, and that would also have a hipped roof tying into the side of the 2-story wall. Because, as I said, it is a corner lot, the current side setback are 5 feet on the interior side, the left, and 10 feet on the right, which faces Beechwood Avenue. So they are requesting a reduction of the side setback from 10 to 5 feet. There are a few examples of historic houses on similar lots nearby with sections of the house that have setbacks less than 10 feet, but generally those are small bays like covered doorways or a bump out bay window projection of less than 100 square feet. Staff didn't locate any historic houses with an addition that sets out to the side into the setback buffer. So for that reason, staff concluded that the side portion of the 1-story porch would not meet the design guidelines 2B1C and 2B2A, which relate to setbacks and additions, and that the setback reduction for the porch would not be appropriate. In general, the materials would be cement fiber siding, composite roof shingle, split face block for the foundation, wood trim for the columns and railings. The roof, as I said, would have a lower slope pitch, but it would still be appropriate. The window pattern essentially matches the proportion and rhythm of the existing windows, so that is appropriate. Other aspects, staff did find, as detailed in your staff recommendation, found to be compatible. Staff would recommend approval of the application to construct a 2-story addition with the condition that staff approve final details of certain materials such as doors and windows, and that the porch could extend off to the rear of the addition but not out to the side into the setback, required setback, which would also allow the addition to meet the required 2-foot inset. And then in changing that, in order to maintain the rhythm, we would ask that at least one of what would be a door to the side porch would be switched out with a window. And then, of course, that the applicant submit drawings with all the major measurements called out prior to approval. With those conditions, or prior to issuing a permit, with those conditions, staff finds that the project would meet the design guidelines for additions in the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. I believe the applicant is here to talk, and you received public comment that was distributed or emailed to us. We distributed it in advance.
Hey, Sean, can you go to the slide that shows the porch that you want to have set to remove the setback?
Yes, I'll start by showing it here on the site plan. You can see that the 2-story addition sets in and then kind of sets back out on the left, which is the upper side. And then the 1-story porch wraps around sort of an L shape, is filling in the corner of that addition. So here's that from the view from Beechwood. Actually, the applicant provided a 3D sketch. This is more or less taken from the corner of Oakland and Beechwood, and then this is the 3D sketch. So this is essentially showing how that
So
would.
your recommendation is basically you would not see this porch?
Well, it's a corner lot, so it would be very visible, but we would.
It wouldn't stick out?
Exactly. It would be where the wall of the addition is or something that does set in from the silhouette of the house.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can see, ooh, this one's louder. On the right side elevation, the addition portion has 2 doors and then or maybe, it's hard to tell with the brightness of the screen, but it has a pretty regular opening pattern going along that right elevation, and at least one of those is a door that accesses the side porch. If the porch were not allowed to set in, if the setback reduction were not allowed, we think that the proposed window rhythm is still appropriate. So since there's not a porch that would need a door, in order to maintain the rhythm, just put a window there.
Replacement of the door with a window is sort of goes hand in hand with the recommendation against the side setback variance.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Sean? All right. This item is open for public hearing. If you have a presentation for the commission, please come forward. State your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Blaine Bonadise. I reside at 1606 Linden Avenue. I'm the architect on this project. We've provided some additional information for you in this handout. Before we get to the Sanborn maps, there are 3 major points I want to make, and that is number 1, as you can see in the Sanborn maps, historically there are many corner lots. We counted up to 15 within the general area. In addition, there are 4 others numbered 4, 5, 11, 12, and 10 within sight of our project that have side setbacks that are less than 10 feet. So we are in disagreement that this is not consistent historic development. Number 2.
This is about the porch.
I'm sorry?
This is about the...
Number 2, we think that the single-story open addition to the rear and the side will help to sort of break up that large mass along that avenue. If we were to eliminate that and put the porch in the rear, as is suggested, we feel like we're going to end up with the example shown on the 3rd to last page, which, in my opinion, is less appropriate. Questions?
That's it? Okay. You all have questions for the architect? Or does anyone else that'd like to make? Okay. All right.
Sorry, just one question. The one you pointed us to, the 3rd page from the last, are you saying that if you don't have the reduced setback, you'll move the porch all the way to the back and it won't be just inset? I mean, there's still a portion of it that steps in significantly after the 2-foot inset. That would still be porch, right?
The idea is threefold, really, and that is to provide some side entry to what is beginning to be a very long house. there's an access point there on Beechwood, which would bring you directly into what would now be more or less the center of the house, with groceries, kids, etc. So we want to exploit that possibility so that we can have some ingress and egress in that side, as opposed to coming in the back through the garage, across the lawn, which, if the porch is pushed to the back, there will be no lawn, and then into the house. So what we're, in addition, I think it helps to kind of mitigate that two-story kind of bust on the back of the house effect. It will be open, so it will be able to be, you will be able to see how it's recessed beyond. It's really just a brim of a hat that's been lowered, just beneath that belt course that is at the second floor. If there's any fear whatsoever about any of that getting enclosed, that's going to have to go before the board anyway. And we're not proposing that. We're proposing for it to be open, at least visually. If there is screen, you can certainly see through that.
Aren't most of your examples a lot smaller or narrower than this? I mean, they seem to be 10, 15 feet versus, what is that, 40 feet?
The examples that we've given you are less than 10 feet.
I'm talking about the width of your porch.
Yes.
That seems to be a lot wider than most of these examples, which seem to be a lot like half the size. And I get half the size. It just seems like
I guess you're picking up on something that I didn't mean to represent.
And Richard, I'd point out that some of the examples shown in here, the entire house is less than 10 feet from the sidewalk. So it's not just the porches, but in some cases, the entire two-story mass of the house is actually, within 3 or 4 feet, it appears, of the sidewalk, which is the property line.
Maybe I'm not stating what I'm trying to state. I'm not worried about the setback as I am the length of the porch itself along the side. Looks like most of the ones that you've shown are significantly less long.
Well, the porch is meant to be a landing for ingress and egress and a grill. To the west, there is a screen porch. So it's really two things. It's a porch and a screen porch that have been integrated. We can certainly delineate those two if architecturally necessary to create one that looks more as an entry that doesn't blend into the screen porch. But again, I think what we've proposed is, the most appropriate solution.
All right. You all have any other questions? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else?
Okay.
Anyone else that wants to speak?
I've already asked.
Okay,
no one.
thanks.
Discussion? Yes, sir.
If I may, I just want to say I think the addition of this porch, regardless of the setback encroachment, being that it is a corner lot, the activity that will, from a pedestrian standpoint from the street, I think this is a nice addition. The transparency of it and what it could add to the neighborhood as a whole instead of a flat facade along that corner lot. I think he's done a good job.
I really agree, and I look at this 2512 Oakland home addition, which appears to really meet our guidelines, stepped back a couple of feet from the facade, and the porch is on the rear, which is what the staff is recommending. Richard, they're recommending having no side porch. Now that may be because to have a side porch, it's requiring a setback variance. But I agree. I mean, it breaks down the scale of what's going to be a pretty large home, and that's what we keep hearing from the neighborhoods here are these large additions and the massing of them, and what it really seems more appropriate than what we're seeing in this image. And again, it's transparent, creates some activity on the street. People will be hanging out on the porch, and I'm seeing a lot of, I mean, it's one of those situations where, and I don't know if the staff would want to weigh in, but our guidelines aren't always perfect necessarily, and don't always work with every situation, and there's often precedents in the neighborhoods that might be exceptions to our guidelines. And in this case, in this particular area, there happens to be almost every corner within the area is less than 10 feet from the sidewalk. So it's a challenge to apply sort of these prescriptive, very numeric rules to every situation throughout the neighborhoods.
Honor, I agree with that, but we also see, I mean, and this is the flip side of it, is that we're setting a precedent, and we've already identified that there are 15 areas that could come back and try to propose something like this that's going to sort of push that envelope even more. And I'm just saying that we have to be very, very careful.
How much of a variance are we? How close to the property line is the?
Yeah, it's a reduction from 10 feet to 5 feet.
5 feet. Okay. Thank you.
Where does that put it with respect to the sidewalk? 5 feet from.
I believe it's about 7 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's correct. The house is, well, yes, that sounds correct. It's 7 feet, and then the solid portion of the addition sets in 2 feet, and this sets out. Maybe it's somewhere around there.
Somewhere around.
I might be wrong about that. The house may be. It must be more than 7 feet, because if we're the edge of this porch is going to be 5 feet.
Is the back of the sidewalk not the property line? The right-of-way line is.
Yes, correct. The inside edge of the sidewalk.
So if they're asking for 5 foot variance, then I would suspect it would put it 5 feet.
5 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that?
I think that's right.
Is it?
It's more like 7, but
Okay.
at least 5 feet.
So, yeah, Hunter, I think to the point, if we look at the left elevation and imagine the addition flipped, is that, am I reinforcing your feelings in terms of meeting the guidelines and trying to fit this into, into a specific situation, specific corner?
Yeah, if the whole house was flipped and that elevation was on the street, I would be more concerned about that. And I think the porch really helps break down that massing, which I know is the concern of typically of the neighborhoods, of how big these homes are getting as they extend back into the lot.
Okay.
All right, do I hear a motion? Okay, there's a motion to approve step to.
Actually, you want them to.
We're not.
Yeah, well, you want an exception on that.
I don't think that's what you meant.
If I could help, staff is recommending approval with several conditions, including that the porch only extend off the rear of the house and not the side. So I don't know if you want to try to restate.
I make the motion to approve the porch as we've just discussed and seen.
Okay, I think we need to be a little bit more definitive with our motion.
Perhaps somebody else should make the motion.
I'm sorry. Hunter, would you want to give a stab at that?
So we have a motion. Maybe we should ask for a second, and then we'll move on from there. In terms of motion, yeah.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, the motion fails because we did not receive a second. Okay, do I hear another motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve staff recommendation without the second and third bullet points. which, for clarification, is that the porch extend only off the rear of the house and not the side, and thereby not requiring a setback reduction. And then secondly, that at least one window take the place of the door that currently is proposed to lead to the side, which the staff stated goes hand in hand with the second bullet point. So the two conditions would be that final details of windows and doors be approved by staff, and that the applicant submit new drawings with major measurements called out.
Is that clear for you all? Enough? Okay, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, one opposed. The motion does pass.
I will be presenting this case, but the staff recommendation was written by my colleague Melissa, who is home with her 6-day-old son, probably watching on Channel 3.
Probably not.
Probably not, hopefully. 119 Windsor Avenue is a contributing circa 1935 concrete block family house. It's concrete block with stucco. The application is for a rear addition and a ridge raise. 119 Windsor's lot is irregularly shaped and wider than the typical lot in the district. It is 90 feet wide at the front and 50 feet wide at the rear, so it's a reverse pie-shaped. The proposed addition meets the base zoning for setbacks and all base zoning requirements. On the right side, the addition is inset 1 foot off the back wall of the house, and after the initial inset, the addition steps back out to a little less than 3 feet wider than the house's block wall. However, the addition will still inset from the house's existing bay seen on the above photo, The attached storage shed will also extend beyond the back wall of the house and will line up with the wall of that bay. On the left side, the addition does not step in from the back wall of the house. The addition will extend 4 feet 6 inches wider to the left of that back wall. And staff finds that this lack of inset and the wider proportion of the addition to be appropriate in this instance because of the width of the lot and because the addition will be behind an existing side porch shown in that photo, which also would help to reduce the visibility of that addition. In addition, the wider portion of the addition is relatively modest in scale and size. It extends less than 5 feet back beyond the wall of the house. It's only 1 story tall. It is more than 2 feet shorter than the historic house, and the addition's side gabled roof form will help to, the existing addition or the porch off to the side will help to reduce the impact of the structure. The front elevation, the project involves a ridge raise, which staff finds to meet the design guidelines because it is designed to stead in 2 feet from each of the side walls of the house and raises the ridge 2 feet vertically in elevation, continuing the existing slope. The side elevations, the project includes altering of some historic house materials. The concrete block will be re-stuccoed. The asbestos siding in the gable fields and on the existing bay will be removed and replaced with cement fiber siding. The house will be re-roofed. And the proposed materials for the new addition include cement fiber siding, more concrete block, but just for the foundation, shingle roof, screen porch, wood trim. All of the known materials have been approved by the commission in the past, and staff finds them to meet the design guidelines. However, we would ask to review the final shingle color and material, and the material for the windows and doors prior to purchase and installation. For the rear facade, staff finds that the addition of the ridge raise to meet the guidelines in terms of scale, setback, and proportion, and staff finds that the removal of catching up on Melissa's recommendation here. Staff recommends approval of the addition and ridge raise with the condition that staff review and approve shingle color and material and the window and the material of the window and doors prior to purchase and installation. Sorry, I think that's everything. I'm not sure if the applicant is here, and this sounds like they are. So,
all right. Thank you. Do you all have any questions? Sean? If not, we'll open this to public hearing. If you would like to come before the commission and give your name and address, make your presentation.
My name is John Steele. I'm the architect. And Warner Jones is here with me, the homeowner. I'm really here to see if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
All right. All right. Do you all have any questions of the homeowner? I mean, the architect or the homeowner? Okay.
Can you tell us how the transition is going to work from the essentially flat roof on the back to the, I guess what's called out as shingle roof on the front? And whether that's going to be visible at all from the front of the house?
No, it will not be visible. There will be a ridge, probably a metal cap to help the transition to the EPDM roofing.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, do I hear a motion? Pardon? Okay. All right. We have a motion to approve staff recommendation. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All of in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 1505 Dale Lane.
Oops. 1505 Gale Lane is a contributing colonial revival house, circa 1929. And the house has a stone foundation, brick veneer walls, and it is part of the recently expanded portion of the Belmont-Hillsborough overlay. I believe it may even be the first in within the newly added sections. The application is to construct a one-story rear addition that is slightly taller than the one-story historic structure and includes a two-bay garage at the basement level. This project also involves demolishing a non-contributing accessory structure. The demolition of the existing accessory structure meets the guidelines because that structure is non-contributing. The addition will set in from the primary wall of the house on the left side by 1 foot, on the right side by 1 foot, which is on the bottom of the screen here, creating an alcove nearly 8 feet deep before stepping back in line with the outer wall of the house, and then ultimately nearly 75 feet back from the front of the house. The addition will step back out to the right, and then which aligns with the outer wall of an existing front projecting bay. It's either, I've been calling it a sunroom. I'm not sure exactly what it might be there. But that's all on the bottom edge of the site plan here. The roof is mostly at the height of the existing roof and then steps up another foot at the very rear. Again, this happens nearly 75 feet back from the front wall of the house, so it will not be greatly visible. The eave heights and foundation height also step up, but that's largely obscured behind that side projecting sunroom that is on the right house. I say that it's 75 feet back. I should have mentioned earlier that the lot is 100 feet wide and 300 feet deep, backing up to 440. So it's very large, sort of a long, narrow lot. So that's why some of these proportions might not be appropriate elsewhere. They are here. The roof form and pitches, the window proportion and rhythm and materials are all fairly similar to those of the existing house. The materials will be brick, stucco, and stone. Those, again, are compatible, matching those of the existing house. Staff, of course, would request final approval of specific material selections, specifically windows and doors, to make sure that those meet the design guidelines. The addition also includes an attached garage at the basement level of the rear addition. Typically, attached garages are not appropriate, but in this case, the slope and the dimensions of the lot allow for the garage to be in the basement level and to be accessed from the front by an existing curb cut and driveway. And here, going back to this floor plan, you can see that, as I said, the addition sets in 1 foot on the right, but it's more than 25 feet set in from the left wall of the house, so this garage will not be visible from the front. In conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the project with the condition that staff provide final review of windows, doors, and specific brick, stone samples, and the roof color. With that condition, staff finds that the application meets the applicable sections of the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Design Guidelines.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions of Sean? This item's open for public hearing. If there's someone in the audience who would like to address the commission, if you'll please come forward and give us your name and address.
We normally to close off the room so that people have to sit closer to the front.
Right. Hi, I'm the owner along with my husband and our builder here, so we're just here to do whatever's in agreement with the staff to go ahead and get this approval. So I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of homeowner? Any discussion? I'll close the public hearing. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Move approval with staff recommendation.
I have a motion and a second to adopt staff recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. 239 Lauderdale.
I hope it shows all right on your screens. It's a little washed out on the overhead, but hopefully you can see on that pretty well. This next case, 239 Lauderdale Road, is an application to construct, well, let me say, I'll start off with some background before saying what they're trying to do. 239 Lauderdale currently is a one-story brick ranch house constructed circa 1960. It is non-contributing to the historic character of the district, which is primarily Tudor Revival and Colonial Revival houses constructed in the early first quarter of the last century up to around 1940 as the end of contributing structures. Cherokee Park is different than many of our districts because it doesn't have a formalized street grid. The streets are very curvilinear and they do not have rear alleys. The surrounding lots, this lot and surrounding lots, are irregularly shaped due to the curved streets. And as a result, there's a lot of diversity in the forms of houses. The heights and widths are very irregular. In general, however, houses on wider lots tend to be wider as well and have deeper setbacks. The current lot, the front setback is 60 feet, which you can see there I've outlined, is nearly 20 feet greater than the average setback of houses on the straighter portions of the street. So that's the background. The application is effectively we thought of considering it as adding a second story to the non-contributing house. But because it is non-contributing and because the end result bears so little resemblance to the existing structure, we decided to treat it as new construction. So that's where we came from in our review. But first, the demolition of the structure would be appropriate because the structure is non-contributing. And although we are considering its demolition and new construction, I may refer to the existing structure because of the way they're keeping some portions, but I hope that doesn't confuse the issue. So again, the new house will be 2 stories tall. A portion of the house will be 2 stories tall with a hipped roof ridge at 34 feet above grade, with a primary eave height of 19 feet. The other half will have a ridge height of 28 feet 6 inches with an eave height 10 feet 6 inches above grade. And that 10 feet 6 inches is roughly the same eave height of what the existing house is. The height is equal to that of several houses in the area, albeit some of the taller ones, but it does include a colonial revival house across the street, which is 32, 34 feet, somewhere around there. The height of this structure will be lessened to some extent because the grade at floor level is approximately 3 feet below the street level, and because of the deeper street setback that I described before. You can see on this photo, which is the existing non-contributing structure house on the left and an existing contributing house on the right. Even though those houses are adjacent, you can see roughly where the floor level would drop so far from the house on the right to the left. If you're standing in the very edge of the driveway of the existing house, the floor level of the house next door is somewhere around chest high. So that will help to mitigate the height of the new house. I'll stick with that. The footprint of the new building will be roughly the same as that of the previous non-contributing structure, which is 83 feet wide and 25 feet deep front to back. The new footprint will be extended with additional room to the rear, but because of the orientation of the house around the curve of the street, the added depth of the house will be largely behind the mass of the structure and not visible. The setbacks of the new house will maintain those of the existing and are consistent with those found on surrounding houses and maintain the established rhythm of the existing street pattern. The materials of the new building will be primarily brick with cement fiber stucco panels, wood half timbering as a secondary cladding on the upper story, and some of the existing brick on the first story is to be reused with new brick as close as possible, matching for the second story and where needed. As a result, that masonry is probably going to need to be repainted, which would be appropriate in this instance because it's non-contributing. However, staff will need to review the brick for texture and size and review the masonry stain or paint color prior to application. Got ahead of myself. The primary roof, as I said, will be a side-oriented hip. The other roofs will be gables, roughly, they'll be steeper but very similar to those of Tudor-style houses nearby. And that dormer on the right of the front elevation here, as proposed, would be stacked above the first story wall below. That's one condition that's not typical of historic dormers nearby, so staff would recommend that it step back 2 feet from the wall below. And with that, staff would find that all the roof forms generally compatible with those of surrounding historic houses. And just kind of speed through things. The proportion and rhythm of openings, the utility locations, those are detailed in your recommendations, but they do meet their respective guidelines. Finally, there's also a detached garage that's being proposed. It would have a floor area of 625 square feet. The materials will match those of the house, cement fiber, board and batten, fiberglass asphalt shingles. Because the neighborhood doesn't have alleys, that is accessed from the front by a new driveway, replacing an existing driveway, but that's appropriate as well. And in closing, staff recommends approval of the application to construct the new primary building and accessory building with conditions that staff approve brick, windows, doors, brick for texture and color, and windows and doors, and that the dormer on the right side of the front elevation set back 2 feet as is typical. With those conditions met, staff finds the application to construct a new building, an accessory building, meet the design guidelines for Cherokee Park.
This item is open for public hearing. Is there anyone that
Can you point out the dormer that you're talking about?
Yes, I'm going to do it over. I think it'll show up better on your screen if I can use the mouse. So this dormer here, yeah.
Okay.
On the side elevation, you can see it stacks above that wall. We would just ask that to set back.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion?
Move approval of staff recommendation.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Staff recommendation is 5 minutes. Quick. Quick. Okay, let me go see if I can find where it is. .4204 Elkin.
Okay. 4204 Elkins Avenue is a one-story craftsman-style house constructed circa 1930, maybe a little earlier. The structure is contributing to the historic character of the overlay, and the applicant is proposing to remove a non-historic rear addition, which you can see there, and enlarge the structure with the construction of a new rear addition. The new addition will have a two-story massing, but it will be 4 feet narrower. The bulk of it will be 4 feet narrower than the existing house. It will, however, be 4 feet taller. That taller roof will not be greatly visible because it occurs at a great distance, approximately 40 feet behind the front of the house. And additionally, it will be obscured because the addition is set in from the sides of the existing house by 3 feet on either side, although that carries back approximately 5 feet before stepping back out 1 foot. So the addition, two-story matching, sets in 2 feet on either side, but there's a hyphen that steps in an additional foot. The materials of the addition will include a smooth face cement fiber siding with 5-inch reveal, split face concrete block foundation, fiberglass shingle roof that would match the color of the existing roof, I believe, and the wood and trim will be wood. The existing vinyl siding and non-original windows are to be replaced. Staff does need additional window on the new windows prior to installation, brand, month and style, etc. However, all considered, staff determines that the materials do meet the guideline 2B1D for new construction and additions. The nearly two-story addition, or the two-story addition, is nearly square with a cross-gabled roof with a 6/12 pitch on the left-right portion and a lower slope pitch on the front to back ridge. As I said before, the roof is only minimally visible because the addition sets in significantly so that it is obscured behind the side-gabled roof of the existing house. The proportion and rhythm of window openings essentially maintains the rhythm of the existing house, so staff finds that to be appropriate and meet guideline 2B1G. Staff recommends approval of the proposed addition to 4204 Elkins Avenue with the condition that staff approve specific window selections prior to purchase, having found this application to meet the Park and Elkins Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay Guidelines.
Shauna, I do have a concern. I know that when we get a proposal in like this, that a lot of the dimensions are not specific, that we need to be very, very careful on placement of windows and things of that sort, we just need to be very, very careful. They don't seem to be complete.
Okay. We can fine-tune the drawings, perhaps, but the applicant's been great to work with and things like that.
All
So.
right, just to make sure that you all are in agreement of the locations, they don't shift too far to the left, too far to the right.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Anything else for Sean?
Sean, you said that the new ridge is 4 feet higher than the existing ridge? Is that what that is?
Correct.
This looks taller than in this drawing here, is that?
I believe it's to scale. I don't know if the projector is skewing it. On the submitted drawings, I put a ruler to it. It's taller than, it may be a little, looks taller than it is because it's tall. The ridge height to ridge height is 4 feet, but that hyphen, the cricket that bridges the two sections, actually drops down 18 inches. So it drops down 18 inches, and then I guess it goes up 5.5 from that point, but from ridge to ridge, it's 4 feet.
I have no issue at all with this. I mean, we've seen cases in the past where, you have this new ridge line and everybody's all bent out of shape because it's an inch taller than the one in front of it. But is this because this zoning overlay has got less standards, or you guys are okay with because it's so set back, or I'm just curious?
Yeah, it's one of the italicized portion of the guidelines. It's the part that is constantly in development. But the precedent that's been set is that additions can be up to 4 feet taller if the taller portion is 40 feet back from the front of the house. So that's
great.
That tends to mean that in the perspective from the street where you would see this, you'd be looking up, and the ridge of the house is what obscures the addition behind it. That wouldn't necessarily work on a front to back gable, but on a side gable, it gives you a lot of room to hide something behind.
Great.
Clarification, Sean, where is the cricket?
Oh, it's the portion between the existing house on the right and the addition, the 2-story section or the 1.5-story section behind. That gable that bridges the two, I would probably call it a saddle. I think a cricket is sort of a contractor's term. Oh, yeah, I could. This portion here, this is sort of a saddle that bridges the two.
All right. Okay, this item is open for public hearing. Are there people in the audience who would like to address the commission? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion?
I'll move approval based on staff recommendation.
Okay. And I do want to make sure that I see some of your concerns about some of the dimensions that are noted. They do not look to scale. So, like window sizes and things of that sort. So I would like further clarification as you all look at the windows. Okay. We do have a motion. We'll hear a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? I'll adopt staff's recommendation. 1713 Sweetbriar.
This is a rear addition proposed for 1713 Sweetbriar. It meets the guidelines in terms of height and roof shape, in terms of scale, location, setbacks, materials, orientation, proportion, and rhythm of openings. Although alterations of cladding, roofing, and window are individually not reviewed in a neighborhood conservation overlay, removal of all of them does rise to the level of partial demolition, which is reviewable. And the applicant has agreed to repair the original cladding and windows and will replace the existing roofing material. Although the drawings look as if the front entrance hood is being reconstructed in a higher location, it is planned that it just be simply repaired. The project meets Section 2B3D of the design guidelines. Staff recommends approval with the conditions that staff review trim, deck, windows, doors, garage doors, and roof color prior to purchase and installation, and the utility locations be reviewed by staff if new locations are planned and needed. With these conditions, the project meets 2B of the design guidelines for new construction and additions. This is some of the context of the neighborhood.
Are there any questions of staff?
Robin, can you back up to the front elevation? Because this is when we just had the application of the rule where if we go back 40 feet, we can go up 4, and that seems to be precedent. This one, we're going back less than 40, but going up
But we're only
less
going
than
up 2
4.
feet, yeah.
my question is, it's kind of hard without, to the right of there's the clipped gable on the right. Behind there, what is the distance? It steps down. What is the distance there? Because that's visible from the front. What's the distance there to the
It's not an attempt to get it to be invisible, but just to make sure that it is subordinate to the main house and it's not something that's hovering over the primary house.
I understand, but what's the distance between, because if that's 2.5 along the main ridge, it seems to be pretty close to 4.
I'll need to check the drawings,
on the
but
side,
my memory is that
and it's only 26 feet.
that side addition is another 2 feet, so it probably is about 4 in that one little corner. But since it is roof, I mean, right now in this drawing, it looks different because the existing roof is shown as white, which of course it's not. And the new addition is shown as black so that you can see the difference. But remember that those 2 roofing materials will be exactly the same color. Mm-hmm. And so it's really not going to stand out at all. We felt like it would not.
Any other questions? All right. Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
The new addition stepping back, 2 feet, is that what you said, on both sides from the main home?
That's correct.
Okay. I do have a motion.
Oh, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
Sorry.
Are we? Aaron. Okay, so it's. I have not, but I need to. Okay, I will vote to approve. Okay. Okay, so the motion carried. The staff recommendation is approved. Okay, 1205 Lillian.
All right. 1205 Lillian Street is a non-contributing structure currently, which staff Sanborn maps indicate was constructed circa 1950. The applicant proposes to demolish that structure and construct a new primary building. Demolition of that structure meets the design guidelines because it is not contributing to the district. The new building will be 1.5 stories tall. The adjacent houses on Lillian Street are non-contributing as well, and those are 1-story houses similar to the one being demolished. Nearby, 1238 Lillian Street is approximately 27 feet tall, and 1230 Lillian Street is approximately 25 feet tall. These are new construction recently approved by the Commission. However, there is not very much historic context to go by, so for this application and those previous ones, staff and the Commission found that those were compatible with historic context further up Lillian Street. The broader historic context of Lillian Street and adjacent streets are mostly 1.5-story craftsman and Victorian houses. The new structure will be 25 feet wide. 25 feet tall from floor level to peak, and 38 feet wide, 38 feet 6 inches wide. It will have a front porch across 2/3 of the house, with a front projecting gable on the remaining third on the left. This form is similar to that of a transitional or folk Victorian gable wing house, which is a common house type in the district. Staff finds the height and scale of the proposed building to meet guidelines 2B1 and 2B2, which relate to height and scale of new construction. The setbacks of the rhythm of the street is established by non-contributing structures, as I said, and recently approved infill. But this is consistent with areas that do have stronger historic integrity. The front setback of the new building will align with that of the adjacent houses. The side setbacks are roughly 6 feet on either side. centered on the lot, and these side setbacks are consistent with those found in nearby areas with stronger historic character, and staff finds them to meet the guidelines as they do meet the bulk zoning requirements as well. The materials of the new building will be a smooth face cement fiber siding, split face block foundation, a grayish brown fiberglass roof shingle. I believe the brand or the maker calls that weathered wood, the color of that. The porch floor and railing will also be wood, and the front porch will have a metal roof. The windows are wood, but the the maker of the front door is not known, so that needs to be approved by staff. But overall, the materials are compatible and meet guideline 2B4. The roof of the new building will be a side-facing gable with a 9 and 12 pitch. The front gable and the two front gable dormers will have a 12-12 pitch. Staff finds these roofs to be compatible with surrounding historic houses and meet the design guidelines. The orientation of the lot, or of the house, matches those of adjacent houses, oriented perpendicular to the lot so that the front elevation is parallel to the street. The primary entrance is centered on the house with a connection to the street via a concrete walkway. The new building will have as I said, a concrete walkway that leads to a paved parking area in the front of the property. Front parking is generally not appropriate. However, because the lot rises very significantly or very steeply from the front to the rear, and it does not have alley access, rear parking is not feasible here. So staff found this to be an appropriate solution, and there is no sidewalk on Lillian Street. Staff recommends approval of the application for proposed demolition of a non-contributing house and construction of a new building with the condition that staff approve final materials of windows and doors. With that condition, staff finds it to meet the Lachlan Springs design guidelines.
Thank you. Any questions?
Sorry, just one question on the parking. There's going to be a retaining wall set off the road, and then they'll just parallel park?
That was our understanding. It's something that we actually sort of discussed with them.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to make sense given how small the lot is, and there's really nowhere.
Another infill on the street tried to dig out parking and put it next to the house, and that created a different situation. Inevitably, you're going to get a retaining wall, and it's just a matter of do you want it at the front or in the middle, or it seemed like
that street's
workable.
unusually narrow to begin with.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? This item is open for public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to address the commission? You'll come up and give your name and address, please.
My name is Jamie Pfeffer. I live at 1123 Glenwood Avenue, and I'm the architect on the project, and I'm here just to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any questions of the architect? Not, I'll close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion or any discussion?
I move approval based on staff recommendation.
Hear a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Just for my records, was that Commissioner Bell, was that you with the second?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
1306, Lillian?
I think next we have 1209 Lillian. This is actually a very similar application. It is also an application to demolish a non-contributing structure and construct a new primary building. In fact, if you've looked through the plans and the staff recommendations, they're very similar. So I'll skip some of the details unless you have questions. But I will say, just briefly, the height, scale, roofs, orientation, driveway is very similar. So staff found that, as it did in the last case, it meets the design guidelines here. With one major, I can skip ahead, difference being that the exterior will be primarily brick with a cement fiber half timbering trim in the upper story. The applicant would need to submit a brick sample for review for purchase and installation, but generally staff finds the materials to be appropriate and to meet the design guidelines. As I said, it's similar in form. This is more of a Tudor revival style as opposed to craftsman or a folk Victorian. But there is a shed roof dormer on the front, which is 8 feet wide with a single window. Staff has found in looking throughout the historic neighborhood that typically a dormer would be, the face of a front dormer would be taken up by more window space. So staff recommends a condition that an additional window be added to that dormer. Also, the front elevation on the left, the projecting gable on the front to the left has shutters which are only appropriate when they're functioning operable shutters. Otherwise, staff finds the proportion and rhythm of windows to be compatible. I think that's basically it as far as what differs between this and the last one. The conclusion is that staff recommends approval of the application for the proposed demolition of a non-contributing structure and the construction of a new primary building with conditions that the front setback, oh, I missed that part. Forgot to get that before. So on the site plan, as I said before, this setback or the rhythm is established by non-contributing houses. The front setback proposed is deeper than that of adjacent houses. Staff finds an appropriate setback would be more in line with adjacent houses. So we would recommend that the house be pulled forward to a line, and then that would meet the design guidelines. So back to my, as I started to say, staff recommends approval of the application with conditions that a front setback be more aligned with adjacent structures, that material specifications for the windows, doors, and brick shall be approved by staff, that the front shutters be removed unless they are functioning shutters, and that an additional window be added in that front shed roof dormer. With those conditions, staff finds the application to meet the design guidelines for Lockland Springs.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So did you talk to the applicant about setback?
Yeah, yes. I think it was coming from the grade of the lot that it's very steep. I think there's an existing structure that actually has a setback similar to what is being proposed. That structure is going to be demolished, but I think, and maybe I should let them, before I won't speak for you, I'll let you have a chance to answer as well, but I think it was, they were sort of going off the reference of the existing structure and waiting to see after that's demolished what the grade of the site is after that condition. Maybe I'll let you take over if that's all right.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Would you come forward, give your name and address, and maybe give us your thoughts?
Sure. My name is Jamie Pfeffer, and again, it's 1123 Glenwood Avenue. And so what we tried to do here is we do have a steep topographic condition, and we went out and field measured the front of the existing construction to base our setback on. And so our intent was, basically, as we pull it forward, we became concerned about the height out of the ground that the front porch and steps would become. It would become very, very steep, and it would have kind of a, as you can see, as we start to come forward, right now the grass there is, in that photo is probably waist height. So it's a little bit, it's quite steep. And so, I mean, we're in agreement that as the demolition and as the site work allows, I mean, it's in the best interest of the client to have more yard in the back to pull the house forward, and so we're in agreement for it. We just, for reasons of how much of that face is showing on the front, has to do with where we're trying to set it. So we agree with the intent of what staff is recommending, absolutely.
And you would work with staff to establish that setback?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, in the field. Okay. All right, any questions? Anyone else that would like to address the commission? All right, close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hear a motion? Okay, we have a motion to approve staff recommendation, which does address the setback. Okay.
What are the? Can you just recite the recommendations so that just to fall on the record?
I think there are two listed. What are the other two?
It's on page 6.
Yes, take the last page. I think might not have pasted all the recommendations into the cover sheet, but on the last page of the recommendation, the conditions were that the front setback shall be aligned with the adjacent structures, that the 2 material specifications for windows, doors, and brick shall be approved by staff, 3, that the front shutters shall be removed unless they are functioning, and 4, an additional window be added to the front shed roof dormer.
Okay, and that is your intent of the motion? Okay, all right. Okay, I have a motion.
I think it'd be nice just to clarify the setback will be worked out with staff depending on final grading or something like that, so there's some leeway that can be given just for the record.
Right. Would you like to amend your motion to include?
You can take his suggestion as a motion to amend and either agree or vote on it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. We have a motion, an amended motion. All right. Do I have a second? Second. All right. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're at 1306, Lillian. Getting ahead of myself.
This one is actually very similar to the previous two. 1306 Lillian, application for demolition of a non-contributing house and infill of a new construction. Let's see, get this thing straight. The context is very similar to the previous two as well, as you can see on the slide. This one will be set back 7 feet from the front property line and 8 feet from both the right and left property lines. These setbacks are compatible with the rhythm established to the other houses on the street. The house will be 1.5 stories with a side gable roof and a full width covered front porch. Total height from the front grade, including the 3-foot foundation, will be 28 feet 4.5 inches. The house will be 33 feet wide and 41 feet deep, including the covered front porch. The dimensions are compatible to other surrounding historic houses. Roof shape and proportion and rhythm of doors and windows are also compatible. Exterior materials are very similar to 1205. Smooth face cement fiberboard with 5-inch reveal, split face concrete block foundation, architectural shingled roof. Windows, front door, and exterior trim will be wood, and the front porch roof will be 5V metal. To conclude, staff recommends approval of the demolition of the non-contributing house and the proposed new infill construction with the conditions that the staff review final details for windows, doors, and roof color. With these conditions, the application meets the appropriate design guidelines for the Laughlin Springs East End Conservation Overlay.
Okay, thank you. This item is for public hearing. Do you want to, same thing? Same thing. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay.
No question for staff. It's general. So we take it for granted when you say they have to come back for approval for brick and roof, and I get the windows, but what do you all look for when you say we're going to approve brick and roof?
I can answer that for you. We're just making sure that the brick is a historic brick color and that its shape and form matches historic brick and that the roof color is an appropriate color. So we're not getting into a lot of detail as to exactly the shade, but just making sure that the roof color is not blue or pink or something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
My only question is the 7-foot yard, is that, I mean, I don't think I ever really remember seeing one that narrow or small or whatever.
Actually, the existing foundation is 7 feet.
Is it just, again, the topography of the street driving
Yeah, I mean,
closer to the street on this side and further back on the opposite side?
It definitely is that. And everything right along, I mean, the house adjacent, it's actually the same setback.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be in line when you look at the vicinity map.
This street is just really different from the rest of Laughlin Springs. Very few contributing buildings, if any, right along this block. That side of the street, the houses are much closer. The other side of the street, you have the grade going up, which creates its own challenges. So the context here is just a little bit different.
I guess that's my question. If there are not many contributing homes, do we want to have the 7? I mean, is that a reason to have a 7-foot yard if all the other ones are not contributing?
Well, again, it has to do with the grade, and there's already been several homes constructed, so we're continuing what's
Are there
been
enough
approved in the
contributing
past.
homes to?
Well, there are enough new homes now that have been approved by the commission that we're continuing along that line.
Fair enough.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
I move approval based on staff recommendation.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed.
Here's another, this infill, application for infill that resembles the other, but certainly a little bit different. It's on the same overlay, different part of the overlay, however. 1902 Russell Street was a non-contributing structure. That structure was approved for demolition by the commission last month. I don't think construction or demolition has started, but as I said, it has already been approved. So today we're just reviewing on this a application for new construction to replace that non-contributing structure. The height of this new primary building will be 1.5 stories tall, 28 feet tall from peak to grade. This is compatible with similar craftsman-style bungalows and folk Victorian houses in the area, which are 1 and 1.5 stories. The primary eave height of this house will be 13 feet 6 inches, roughly in line with other historic houses nearby. The materials of the new building will be smooth face cement fiber siding, cement fiber shake siding on a projecting bay, split face concrete block, that same grayish brown fiberglass shingle roof. The wood porch will have a wooden floor resting on concrete piers, and as with the other cases, additional information would be needed on the material of windows and doors. That can happen as an inspection during construction, but staff finds the materials generally to be compatible with those of historic houses and to meet the guideline 2B4. The primary roof of the new building will be a side-facing gable with a front gabled dormer centered on the slope of the front slope of the roof. The orientation, setbacks, and proportion and rhythm of windows matches that of adjacent houses. I didn't put in a site plan in the presentation. There will also be a new accessory building in the rear left corner of the property. That structure will be 16 feet tall with an eave height of 9 feet. That structure has a 517 square foot footprint. The materials will match those of the house, the cement fiber siding, cement concrete block foundation, fiberglass shingle. The garage doors will face a rear alley, the vehicle doors, and the location and accessory of that building meets the guideline 2B8, which applies to outbuildings. The new primary building will keep a concrete walkway in front that connects to an existing driveway. That driveway is to be partially removed. It would leave a paved, it is an existing driveway that goes to the rear of the lot, and it would be removed, leaving a paved section for parking towards the front of the property. Because it's existing, but because it's not typical, staff would ask that the driveway be either left intact or that it be retained up towards the midpoint of the house. Or I should say that it be removed entirely or that it be retained from the midpoint of the house back. And also that the concrete walkway be extended to address the street. Staff finds the proposed new construction of a primary building and accessory building recommends approval of the construction of a primary building and accessory building with conditions that the driveway shall either be removed entirely or retained from the midpoint of the structure to the street, that the concrete walkway be extended to the street, and that staff provide final approval of windows and doors prior to purchase. And with those conditions, staff finds the application to meet the Lockland Springs Neighborhood Conservation Overlay Design Guidelines.
Any questions of staff?
There's an alley behind this property, right?
There is, yes. And the garage will be accessed from the alley. It'll have garage doors facing the alley, not the front. But they wish to keep a portion of the driveway.
Don't we typically require that if there's an alley that you use that as your access?
We would, and they intend to. If there wasn't a driveway and they wanted to put one there, we would, in all likelihood, say that doesn't meet the guidelines because it's an existing condition, sort of just letting it stay there. We're actually just asking that they keep more of it.
Less of it.
Yeah. So that you don't end up with somebody parking in front of the house. I guess we can't really regulate where somebody parks, but at least if they have the option of parking further back, hopefully they will do so.
Showing your map of heights of structures in the vicinity, where is this? Where's 1206 or 1902 on this map?
Well, on sort of just right of center, in black and white, I guess it doesn't show up all that well, but there's a squiggly line that kind of, squiggly cloud line.
All right, so there's a structure to the right of it at 27.6 feet. Is that what you're saying?
And that 27.6 is a contributing hipped roof, sort of like a Victorian Queen Anne transitional, something along those lines.
I just want to be sensitive to this height issue, and that given our meeting, a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I think it was a request from perhaps you or certainly one of the commissioners that we try to include that when available.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I do have another question on the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
So the other neighboring houses, do they have driveways as well, or any at all?
I know that the adjacent structure, which is non-contributing also, does have a driveway and actually a front-facing, I believe a front-facing attached garage. So that's, so there are some, and there are some houses with curb cuts and driveways, but it's generally not the case that historic houses would have a front-facing.
Right, I guess again, concern of consistency within the neighborhood. You're not making an exception for this particular case.
Correct. We're not making an exception other than we're allowing something that is already a non-conforming or yes.
And there are other neighbors that have it.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as far as the heights go, the houses immediately adjacent to it on that side of the street, those are both non-contributing, is that right?
Yeah, those are non-contributing, minimal, traditional. The one that's to the right when you're facing, to the left when you're facing, so to the right on this map is, I think, more along the lines of a ranch. Both of those two are non-contributing.
Across the street, they're significantly shorter as well. Are many of those non-contributing? Or?
It's a mix. I don't know if I have, since we reviewed I think I put in more pictures for the demolition last month. Yeah. They are craftsmen, one-story craftsmen, 1.5, or one with 1.5 stories. Some of them have a front dormer.
Something for staff again.
Oh, yeah.
Sean, just
I'm sorry.
Question. Sorry if you were looking for that. Because sometimes where one commissioner might be here or another, and not knowing that, because I wasn't here in August when that was shown, so sometimes pictures would be helpful. Again, thank you.
We'll try to I'll make sure that I add contact shots to the PowerPoint.
Any other questions? This item is open for a public hearing. Anybody would like to address the commission? Seeing none, he's given me the high sign. Close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
All right. Do I hear a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. 2403 Fairfax.
For this project, the applicant proposes one of three houses. For this project, the applicant proposes one of three houses that's planned for this lot. There was originally 2 and recently subdivided into 3 lots. The proposed house is for the new interior lot facing Fairfax and will be visible from 2 streets until the corner lot's developed. The project meets the design guidelines in terms of setbacks, known materials, orientation, proportion and rhythm of openings, and percentage of open space. However, the project does not meet the context in terms of scale and form. The full width of the house is 51 feet and 3 inches, not counting the right chimney, and the front massing of the house is 48 feet wide. Historic homes in the immediate context range between 40 to 45 feet, not counting side carports and the rare exception. However, all these homes are also one-story homes. The closest 2-story homes are approximately 36 feet wide, quite a bit narrower. The building across the street was not considered in determination of scale and form, as it's a school rather than a residential building. Staff finds that the width of the house, coupled with the proposed height, is out of scale for the neighborhood. Appropriate scale is also determined by a massing and form that does not greatly differ from the historic context. The form of the structure is essentially a 2-story piano box, of which there are a few 1-story examples in the neighborhood, but not 2 stories. The massing of this form is more typical of multifamily structures on larger lots rather than a single-family structure on a single lot. And this is the rear of the proposed home. Since the alterations to the form and width affect every other aspect of the home, both inside and out, staff did not find that a simple condition was achievable, and so therefore has to recommend disapproval of the project as not meeting Section B of the design guidelines. An accessory structure is planned and shown on the site plan, but there are no elevations submitted at this time. Staff recommends disapproval, finding that the overall scale and form of the house is not compatible with historic context and therefore does not meet Section 2B of the design guidelines for new construction in the Hillsborough West End Conservation Zoning Overlay. And the architect and the property owners are here if you have any questions.
Any questions of the staff before we open the public hearing? All right. Okay. Michael, if you come up and give us your name and address.
Good afternoon. Michael Ward with Allard Ward Architects, 1702 Linden Avenue. We are honored to be involved with the new development at Fairfax and 24th Avenue. The property owner, property developer Steve Ezel, and the future owners of 2403 Fairfax, Jack and Cindy Herndon, are present with me today. As many of you on the board are aware of, this lot has been vacant for at least 15 years. And as a neighbor myself, I've heard of many multi-family proposals for the lot, and I'm thrilled that this client has chosen to build 3 single-family homes instead. I believe that they will serve as an historically appropriate gateway to the Hillsborough West End neighborhood. We respect staff's opinions, but disagree with the valuation of the home we propose for the property. We believe the design we submitted meets the historic guidelines and ask for your approval of the project today. Prior to submitting detailed plans and elevations, we met with staff on several occasions and reviewed lot sizes, footprints. We negotiated setbacks, width, height. We designed the home within the constraints that we believe we had already sort of negotiated with staff. Therefore, we were surprised with that staff considers the form of the house incompatible with the neighborhood. The form of this house already exists in the neighborhood as well as historic neighborhoods, as we will show. And you've got a little handout that I provided with some color photographs on it. We have altered an historic form to accommodate modern living in this very urban site. We've explored other form options with staff and have considered redesign, but given the owner's excitement about the design, the substantial resources already invested in this design, and our belief the design is presented and complies with the guidelines in Section 2B, we are here with you today. For my reading of staff's recommendations, the only area of contention keeping this home from approval is scale and form. So let me address these for you with some context and examples. I know that this body is concerned about the subject of scale. I have been invited to address this before you before. We all work and are aware of the trade-offs between footprint and height. I've worked in historic neighborhoods more than 20 years, and based on my conversations with you, council members, and the public, most neighbors are more concerned with footprint than height. And that was an important consideration in the design of this house. Exhibit 1, the streetscape plan that I provided for you. According to his Hillsborough West End Section 2B guidelines for new construction Part B scale, the size of a new building and its mass in relation to open space shall be compatible by not contrasting greatly with surrounding historic buildings. We are situated on the tip of this overlay district. We have a much greater context than 2-3 houses that exist down the street from us here on Fairfax. We're surrounded by historic buildings, institutional and residential. Aiken School and Martin Development Center are both considered historic buildings, and they're part of our context because they sit in our front yard. The Ronald McDonald House is on the northeast corner. It's a very large building. They own the southeast corner as well, and I'm sure have future plans to build another building probably as big as the one they already have on the northeast corner. There are several apartment buildings, some period, some not period, but they vary up and down Fairfax, Convent, and even on 24th Avenue. Our massing reflects a unique and very changing urban context. The second exhibit there you have form precedent and context examples. According to Section 2A Principles of New Construction, Article number 3, new buildings shall not imitate past architectural styles. They should reflect the era of their own construction. The double gable form, as you see on our house, does exist on Barton and on various other streets, and we've got photographs of some of those there. The gables are pulled forward so the large mass can be pulled back. The width is similar to other wider lots, and this neighborhood has a lot of variety in lot width. Our house is 51. We've got houses as wide as 52 and 54 feet behind us on Barton. The height is 33 feet, which is shorter than the 4 squares on Fairfax and the one behind us on Barton. The form of this house reflects a modern, open floor plan. The first floor is primarily public space and fairly transparent. The private spaces, including all the bedrooms, are on the second floor. The total square footage of the house is only 3,530 square feet. The 2-story design conserves the open space on the site, and that was a critical design question for the owner and the developer. The footprint of the house is only 1,830 square feet. We feel like we have a distinct, modern, sustainable house on a great site. And we believe that our exhibits show that this house is compatible with the guidelines in 2B. Copying an existing form in the very limited context of the overlay will not make this a memorable house or an impressive gateway for the neighborhood. This is a unique lot, and it deserves a great house. We know it's been a long day, and we appreciate your consideration. Thanks.
Do you all have questions for Michael?
I have one question, Michael.
Yes, ma'am.
On your presentation here on the form precedent,
yes,
you quoted 33 foot, but this says 48 foot front massing.
On which one? Pardon
this
me?
one, 2403. Right here. You've got 48 foot front massing, but I heard you say 33 foot.
Oh, no, it's 51. The total is 51. 48 is the mass that pulls forward to the street.
Okay. 33 height.
33 is the height. Correct. I'm sorry.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. And it's sort of broken down. You can see it in the streetscape, how we sort of fit in. There's some grade differentiation going on there, too, on our street.
I just that probably had nothing to do with the building itself, but that the third lot that faces 24th.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything in that block that faces 24th? That's going to be the only one, except for the ones across
Until
the
you
street.
get on the other side of Barton, true.
Yeah, well, or even on the other side of the street, there's a vacant lot there, correct?
Correct. Vacant
And then
lot,
the-
that vacant
and then
lot's
the
owned by Ronald
apartments.
McDonald, and the school uses it now for playfield.
Right, okay.
And there's a big apartment building
I just
beside
wanted
that.
to make sure I had.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, any other questions for Michael?
Can you, I'm just now looking at the site map. Can you walk me through the surrounding historic buildings one more time in your mind to this site?
I think he's looking at this site map. Is that, yeah?
Yeah, I don't have a copy of that one up here with me. But basically what we've got, so across the street from us, directly across the street is the Martin Center. And sort of over beside that's Aiken, which stretches all the way down that block. So most of what we've got in very immediate context are these sort of 1.5-story little clapboard bungalows. Then you get it further up the hill, you get some of the larger four squares, including an infill house, a very modern infill house that was approved several years ago.
And it go, I mean,
They sort of step up the hill.
it does step up. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a slight hill.
Exactly. And then when you get over on Barton, the context changes a little bit because the houses get a little bit nicer, the lots get wider, and we just don't feel like, you know, a little clapboard 1.5-story house is going to be appropriate given all the big buildings that'll be sitting around it. You know,
But your big buildings are across the street, is that right?
Correct. Well, on both cross streets, and like I said, the house behind us on Barton is 30-something.
But the ones right next to you are small.
Correct. The ones next to us are small.
And then the architect's house on Fairfax is what, another block up?
Yes, sir.
Go, the pictures that you, go back one. One more. Yeah, there we go. Now, those are further up Fairfax, right?
These are fairly immediate.
Well, I know, but I mean, as you go from the corner of 24th and Fairfax, you're going up the hill.
Correct. That's correct. They're going up the hill.
Where's 2503 Fairfax? That's right next to...
That is on the other side of 25th Avenue. It's beside the Modern House.
Right.
So it's on up the hill from us.
So basically, your argument is there are sufficient large-scale, shall we say, homes within that surround your site.
Correct. And that our context is continually changing, and it's not getting smaller and more residential. It is getting larger and more urban.
But surrounding is across the street and a block down the street and behind you and stuff like that. Not
next door.
What across the street from 24th is a vacant lot, and that's where is that the Ronald McDonald House?
No, Ronald McDonald House is currently on the southeast corner, but they own the northeast corner.
Right,
also.
that's okay. They own that.
We don't know what will be on the northeast corner, but it won't be a playfield for long.
If I may jump in just a little bit, the height alone is not a concern of the staff. They've already lowered the height by 3 feet from what they originally submitted, and the context is there. If you look, like you said, just behind it, you have 36-foot tall homes right next to a 19-foot tall home. So having tall homes next to small homes is part of the context of the neighborhood. The concern was the height and the width together, and the form, the double gabled form of the house, which you don't see in a 2-story form. So it's not just the height alone. When the houses get taller, they get a little narrower.
Is that true of the Barton? So the Barton house is tall, it's just narrow. That's what you're suggesting?
The taller homes get narrower.
Okay.
Yes.
The house 2503 Fairfax?
in the 36-foot wide range.
And this guy is how big?
This one is 48 feet. The front massing of the house is 48 feet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
One question, has it already been subdivided into 3 lots? That's already
Yes,
happened?
sir.
Okay.
And to meet all those required square footages and basically give all these houses nice yards, they are, wider than 50-foot lots, which the neighborhood's peppered with 65 and 70-foot wide lots.
Do we recall what was there before?
I don't know for
Not that
sure.
it matters. Not that it matters.
I've never.
It's been
I don't
vacant
ever
for
remember.
forever.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
Small house.
Discussion, comments? Questions for Michael?
I'm going to take it all in.
The subsequent, I guess this was the original proposal, is that right? And then there were subsequent conversations and...
Well, we took the original proposal and we scaled it down to meet, we met a couple of times and tried to get the height down, and we looked at how we would alter the form to make it something that staff felt like would be workable. So we had 1 gable instead of 2. And it just seemed like we were just peeling off parts and really changing little of that scale and form and giving up what we thought was a nice house with some great features to something that looked, quite frankly, a little out of balance. So we spent a lot of time deciding what to do and decided at this point, what do we have to lose then other than to bring what we've put all this sort of effort into and let you decide. If we're going to start with a clean sheet of paper, spend a bunch of more fees, then, we got to wait till next month to do it anyway. So that was sort of our intent. And we, like I said, and he met with staff, and Rob and them were great in terms of sitting down and meeting with us, but anything that we came up with, we felt like was not nearly as successful of design as what we already had. And I think the plan is really important. This is a modern house. It's supposed to be respectful of its time. It's designed from the inside out. It is not designed as a box that we sort of created a form around a context. And especially not, these are adorable houses, but they don't seem appropriate for, you look right down the street, you can see Vanderbilt. So we just felt like this form, and there are places in town where it does exist, it's a nicer, larger, more expensive house than these were. It is representational of the time in which it was built and the type of client and how the neighborhood's changed over the years.
Do I hear a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I was just
Please
say, I'm Cindy Herndon, the prospective owner of the house.
And you'll have to state your address, please.
Pardon me?
Your address, not this one, but where you...
We're in intermediate. We are at 4115 Dorman Drive.
Okay, thank you.
When we started this project, it was really important to me that we were sensitive to the neighborhood. And so when we heard that it was too tall, I couldn't look at the elevation and see that it was too tall. And so I kept saying, is it too tall? I don't want to be too tall. So when we then lowered it and they did the street elevation, I felt like it validated that the mass was not overwhelming. When I drove down the street, if you drive down the street, the first section of that street does not read together like as if you were on a flat road and all the houses were close together. So I didn't want to do anything that looked out of place. And when I saw the streetscape, I felt like it validated that the size was okay. But obviously, we will submit to your judgment.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address this? Okay. All right. Any more discussion? Can we entertain a motion?
My gut, it's just a little too big. I mean, I really appreciate what Mike has done. I tend to side with staff on this. I just wish there was another round that we could maybe look at. It's just an awful big mass, and to think there may be 3 of these on this lot, I don't know. That's just my gut. Discussion. Tired discussion.
Yeah. We're going to have to get off square one here. So do I hear someone else?
Well, my gut is the same as Richard's, and I guess I was hoping to know, I hope that it's feasible that there have been some conversations and maybe a medium could be reached, because right now it just does seem like an awful lot.
Can I take that as a motion? So.
It's a tough one.
So what is the staff recommendation? Just disapproval?
Yes, unfortunately in this case, if it were just a little tweak this here or there, we could add the conditions. But since changing the form obviously changes their layout and how they're going to use the house significantly, we didn't feel like we could really just throw a little condition in there. The whole building would kind of need to be rethought.
I hate our two architects are gone.
Do what? Oh.
I don't mean to be simple, but it is new construction as opposed to an addition where there may be significant constraints on what you can do because you're already living with an existing home. So with that in mind, I hope that they can come up with something that does better fit what Robin had described. So I'll make a motion to disapprove based on staff's recommendation.
All right. I have a motion. Do I hear a second? All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion to support staff recommendation?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion is passed as disapproval supporting staff recommendation. 375 through 399 Monroe Street.
Okay, we're almost there. This is a continuation of a project that is partially constructed, which is nice because you get to see exactly what it's going to look like. For the historic Germantown district, they are required to obtain a preservation permit at this time because the original building permit has expired. The project is for 3-story townhomes, similar in design to those already constructed along 4th, but will be around the corner there, and 2 1.5 carriage homes on the interior of the lot. The immediate context for this lot includes predominantly non-historic warehouses, so the design guidelines for new construction where there's minimal historic context were used, and this area was taken before any construction, so when you're looking at it, it just looks like one large blank lot. The project meets the design guidelines in terms of site and building planning, setbacks, orientation, mass, scale, height, facade articulation, materials, and known materials. And staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions that staff review and approve any materials that are different in dimension, design, and color to those that are already used on Phase 1, the location of mechanicals if they're in any visible location, and exterior lighting if there are plans for any of those in the future. With these conditions, staff finds the project to meet the design guidelines for new construction in an area with little historic context in Germantown, and I believe the applicant is here if you have any questions.
It's got to be you. Would you like to come forward? Would you like to come and address the commission?
I don't need to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks for lasting through this whole thing. Any questions of staff? Any discussion? Close the public hearing. Do we hear a motion?
Move approval based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Support staff recommendation. Thank you. We've already taken care of the other business. Does anybody have any additional things to add? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second? Let's do it. Motion.